jungle was alive, but quiet in the wrong way. Tall purple trees stretched into the sky like frozen claws. Fog hung low, curling around every root and vine. Strange plants hissed softly, their leaves opening and closing like breathing mouths. Riven, a young human scout, moved slowly through the alien forest. His boots pressed softly into the moss. His uniform was torn and a streak of blood marked his cheek. He had lost contact with his team 3 hours ago. Something had jammed their signals, something bad. And now, he was alone. He reached a clearing and pulled out a small scanner. Nothing, he whispered. Only trees, vines, silence. Then, a cry, thin, echoing, like it came from far away. Or everywhere at once. It wasn't human, but it was a child. Riven stood still. His hand went to his sidearm. Another cry came. Softer. Broken. A scared voice. Trapped, maybe. Lost. He looked around. "Hello?" he called out. "Is someone there?" No. Answer. Only rustling leaves. He turned and walked toward the sound. Step by step. Careful not to trip the forest's hidden dangers. He had heard stories. Alien traps. Creatures hiding underground. Plants that screamed when touched, but the crying didn't stop. He pushed past a thick curtain of vines and stopped. In the middle of the jungle floor, half buried in mud and leaves, was a metal cage, old, rusted, covered in strange glowing marks. Inside, a little alien girl. She looked no older than 6. Her skin was pale blue. Her eyes glowed soft purple in the dim light. Her clothes were torn, thin arms wrapped around her knees. She was shaking. She looked up and froze. So did Riven. For a long moment, neither moved. Just silence. Then she blinked, and a tear ran down her cheek. "It's okay," Riven said softly, holding up both hands. "I'm not here to hurt you." "No." Response. He knelt slowly, trying to appear smaller, calmer. "I'm Riven, human, from the rescue fleet." Still nothing. She looked at him like he might vanish, or strike. Then she spoke in a soft, broken voice. "Everyone, gone." Riven's heart twisted. "You're not," he whispered. He looked at the cage. The bars were cracked. Some had melted. Maybe from a battle. Maybe from something worse. He pulled out his tool and began carefully opening it. The girl didn't move. She only watched. Each time a piece of the cage clicked or groaned, she flinched. Riven worked faster. Within minutes, the door was open. He stepped back, gave her space. "You're free now." She didn't run. She stood slowly, weakly, like her legs barely remembered how. A sharp hiss echoed from behind. Riven spun around, drawing his sidearm. A thick vine moved across the forest floor like a snake, its end shaped like a spiked claw. The girl gasped. Riven grabbed her and rolled aside as the vine slammed into the ground where she had stood. Dust flew, rocks cracked, another vine lashed forward. He fired once, twice. The shots burned the plant back. It screeched and sank into the soil. Breathing hard, Riven looked down at the girl in his arms. "You okay?" She didn't answer, but she didn't pull away. Her tiny hands clutched his jacket. They moved quickly after that. Riven held her close as he ran through the trees, jumping over roots and dodging low branches. Whatever this forest was, it didn't want her leaving. It would rather kill her than let her go, but Riven wasn't leaving without her. Not now. They reached a small hill with a broken satellite post at the top. Riven placed her gently on a flat rock and checked her for wounds. She was thin, cold, tired, but alive. She looked at him with wide, glowing eyes. "Why? You help me?" she asked. He blinked. "No one else did," she added, her voice shaking. "The others ran." Riven paused. He knelt beside her and said quietly, "Because someone has to be the first not to run." She stared at him for a long time. Then, very slowly, she reached out and held his hand. The forest was quiet again. Too quiet. No birds, no wind. Just the sound of her small breaths beside him. Riven sat with his back against a broken tree, trunk. The little alien girl sat next to him, her knees pulled close, her wide purple eyes staring at the sky. She hadn't said another word since she asked why he helped her, but her tiny hand was still holding his, like she didn't want to let go, like she was afraid the moment she did, he'd vanish like the rest. Riven looked around. This part of the forest felt older. The trees looked burned. The plants moved slower, almost sad. He checked his scanner again. Still no signal. Still no map. They were completely on their own. He looked at the girl. "Do you have a name?" She didn't answer. He smiled gently. "Mine's Riven, you can just call me that." Silence. But her eyes flicked toward him, just for a second. A sign she was listening. He reached into his pouch and pulled out a small ration bar. "Want some food?" She didn't move. Then slowly, carefully. She nodded. He unwrapped it and gave it to her. She sniffed it, licked it once, then ate like someone who hadn't tasted food in days. Crumbs stuck to her lips, but she didn't care. Riven watched her. Every bite made her look more alive. But the sadness in her eyes never left. As she chewed, Riven looked at the markings on her skin, faint patterns glowing under her pale blue tone. Not tattoos, not paint. Natural. He had never seen a species like hers before. "What's your home like?" he asked softly. She looked down, then shook her head. Gone. The sun began to fade. Night was coming, and with it, danger. Riven knew they couldn't stay in the open. He stood up and offered his hand. "We need to find shelter." She hesitated, then reached up. Her hand found his again and again. She held tight. They walked together through thick brush, past giant stone roots and cracked alien statues. The jungle seemed darker now. The shadows felt alive. Twice they heard something slither. Twice they stopped and stayed still until the noise passed. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. But she wouldn't let go of Riven's hand, not even for a second. Finally, they reached an old structure. A fallen dome half buried in dirt and moss. The walls were cracked but strong enough to block out the wind. Riven scanned the inside. No heat signs. Safe. He helped her sit against the wall and started a small heating pad. Warm light filled the space. She sat quietly, eyes watching every move he made. He gave her a blanket from his bag. She pulled it up to her chin and said nothing. Then, just before he turned away, she whispered, "Lyra." Riven froze. He looked at her. She blinked slowly. "My name is Lyra." He smiled. "Lyra. That's beautiful." Her lips twitched, almost a smile, almost, but she was still afraid, still waiting for something to go wrong. Riven moved to sit beside the entrance, keeping watch, but Lyra crawled over and sat next to him, her blanket wrapped around both of them, and once again, she took his hand. She didn't speak again, but her body leaned into his side, as if her heart was starting to believe. Maybe this human wasn't like the others, maybe she wasn't alone anymore. The next morning, the jungle was silent again. Too silent. Riven woke with a strange feeling in his chest, like the trees were watching, like something was waiting. Beside him, Lyra was already awake. Wrapped in the blanket, she sat with her knees to her chest, staring at the forest through a hole in the wall. "Bad place," she whispered, without looking at him. Riven nodded slowly. "I can feel it too." He opened his bag and offered her a ration bar. She took it, ate quietly, and didn't say much more. When they stepped outside, the wind was different, colder, still, too still. They hadn't walked far when the first trap appeared. Riven stepped forward, and a thin beam of light flashed across the trees. Just in time, he pulled Lyra back, A hidden blade snapped out of a tree and sliced through the air where her head had been. She froze, eyes wide. He looked at the device. It wasn't natural. It wasn't part of the jungle. It was made. Who would build traps like this? Riven whispered. Lyra said nothing, but her hands began to shake. Then she pointed toward the ground ahead. A shallow hole, freshly covered with leaves. A pit trap. He carefully uncovered it. Spikes inside, old but still deadly. As they moved forward, Riven saw more. Swinging logs, spring-loaded spears, and strange alien tech wired into the ground. Each trap was aimed in one direction, the way they were going. Someone really didn't want anyone to follow this path, he muttered. Or maybe didn't want anyone to find Lyra's mother. Suddenly, a mechanical hum echoed nearby. A drone, sleek, black, floating between the trees. Its red sensor blinked. Scanning. Riven grabbed Lyra and ducked behind a rock. He covered her mouth gently. "Don't move," he whispered. The drone hovered above them, scanning, then it flew on. Riven waited until it was gone, then looked down. Lyra's eyes were full of tears. Not fear, guilt. He touched her shoulder. "Lyra, what's going on?" She shook her head. They want me to stay lost." He blinked. "Who?" She looked up at him with glassy purple eyes. "My people." The words hit like a punch. Her own people? He couldn't believe it. "Why?" he asked quietly. But she just shook her head again. "I don't know. I just ran. Mama told me to run." More silence. Then she added, almost whispering, "She didn't follow." Riven's heart tightened. He remembered her first words in the cage. Everyone gone. Now it made sense. Someone attacked the colony. Someone left traps to keep rescuers away. And someone didn't want this little girl to return. But why? They continued moving carefully. Each step could mean death. At one point, Riven triggered a hidden plate. A large net shot up, but he grabbed Lyra and rolled clear just in time. Breathing hard, they landed beside a mossy log. Then Lyra pointed to something scratched into the bark. "Do not trust her." Riven stared at the words, carved in alien letters. Fresh, recent. "Who wrote that?" he asked. Lyra's hands trembled. She backed away from the tree, whispering, "They think I'm dangerous." He frowned. "Are you?" She looked up at him, heartbroken. "No," she whispered. "I just want Mama." He knelt down and looked her in the eyes. "I believe you." She blinked. Slowly. She took his hand again, her voice cracked. "You're the only one who does." Riven looked down the path ahead. More traps, more danger. But now, he knew this wasn't just a rescue. This was a fight against something bigger. And he would not stop. Not until Lyra was back in her mother's arms. They had just crossed a narrow stream when the ground shook. Riven stopped. His eyes scanned the trees. Lyra grabbed his sleeve tightly. "Something's coming," she whispered. Branches snapped in the distance. Leaves fell. The deep growl of a massive creature echoed through the forest. Then, a roar, loud, wild, and close. Riven turned to run, pulling Lyra with him, but it was too late. From the jungle trees behind them, a giant beast crashed through, twice as tall as a human, its skin thick and rocky like tree bark. With 4 glowing eyes and jaws wide enough to swallow a child whole, Lyra screamed. Riven turned, shielding her behind him. He raised his sidearm, aimed, and fired. The shot hit, but the beast didn't stop. It charged. Riven pushed Lyra behind a log and faced the monster head-on. The beast swung a massive arm. Riven dove, rolled, and barely avoided the blow. His weapon sparked. Out of charge. No more shots. He dropped it. Now it was just him. And his fists. The beast growled again, stepping closer. Riven grabbed a sharp tree branch from the ground and held it like a spear. "I don't care what you are," he said, breathing hard. "You're not taking her." He rushed forward. The beast roared and swung again, but Riven ducked under its arm and stabbed the branch deep into its side. The creature howled and threw him across the dirt. Riven hit the ground hard but got back up. Blood dripped from his forehead. His ribs ached, but he didn't stop. He circled the beast, looking for a weak spot. Lyra peeked from behind the log, her eyes wide with fear and awe. Riven charged again, this time jumping onto the beast's back. He grabbed a thick vine around its neck and pulled with all his strength. The beast thrashed, slamming into trees, but Riven held on. He pulled harder. The creature stumbled, then fell to one knee. Riven grabbed another sharp stick and drove it into the beast's upper neck. With a final roar, the monster collapsed. Still, dead. Riven rolled off, coughing, gasping for breath. His arms were shaking, his legs were weak, but he was alive, and Lyra was safe. She ran to him. "Riven!" He looked up. She knelt beside him, small hands reaching for his bruised face. "You came back," she whispered. "Of course I did," he said, wincing. She touched the scratch on his cheek. "You fought it. For me." He smiled weakly. "You're worth fighting for." Her eyes filled with tears. Then for the first time she hugged him. He held her back gently. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're okay now." She nodded against his chest. They found shelter in the hollow of a thick tree trunk that night. Riven built a fire outside and placed a few stones around it. Inside, Lyra sat close to him, blanket around her shoulders. "I've never seen anyone fight like that," she said softly. "I didn't have a choice," he replied. "You had a choice," she whispered. "And you chose me." Riven looked at her. Every time, she stared into the flames. Then quietly she said, "Mama once told me, if someone fights for you without being asked, that's someone you never forget." Riven smiled. "Then I guess I better keep fighting." The night was long but peaceful. Riven stayed awake, watching over the fire. His arms still hurt from the fight and his ribs felt cracked, but he didn't complain. Beside him, Lyra was asleep, finally. Her small form curled beside the fire, wrapped in the soft blanket, one hand resting near his boot. She didn't cry in her sleep this time. She didn't whimper. For once, she looked safe. By morning, the wind had shifted. It carried a strange scent: burned metal, oil, and something bitter. Riven checked the scanner. Still dead. Still lost. He sat down beside Lyra and opened a ration bar. She woke to the smell and blinked at him with tired eyes. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I had a dream." "What about?" She looked at him and said, "My mother. She's calling me." Riven paused. He looked at her seriously. "Lyra, do you know where she is?" The little girl lowered her eyes, thinking hard. Then she knelt down and pressed her small fingers into the dirt. Line by line, shape by shape, she started drawing: a stream, a crooked tree, a glowing hill, a broken wall, a mark, like a spiral. Then, she pointed at the spiral. "Mama's here." Riven leaned over her drawing. It wasn't much, but to Lyra, it meant everything. "You remember this?" She nodded. "I ran when the sky broke. She told me to go, but she stayed." Riven's heart twisted. He knew what she meant. When the colony was attacked, her mother had stayed behind to protect her. "How far is this place?" he asked. Lyra pointed to the stream they had crossed. "Not far. But bad things are there." "Traps?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "And something else. It watches." Riven looked at the trees around them. The air felt different now. He could feel it too. They weren't just being hunted. They were being watched. He packed their supplies quickly. "Let's go," he said. "We're going to find her." Lyra stood up and followed. No hesitation. She didn't take his hand this time. She walked beside him, stronger than before. They passed twisted roots and fallen towers. The deeper they went, the older the ruins looked. Burnt-out tech, cracked walls, carvings in a language Riven couldn't read. But Lyra seemed to understand it. She whispered names as they passed. Old names. "This was once our home," she said, quietly. Riven looked at her. "You remember all this?" She nodded. "It's still in my head. Even after the fire." When they reached the glowing hill, Riven knew they were close. He could feel it in his chest. He stepped carefully. So did Lyra. Suddenly, click, a sound beneath his foot. He froze. A trap. He looked down. Pressure plate. One wrong move, and, "Don't move!" Lyra cried. She quickly dropped to the dirt and began brushing around the plate. A small circle of glass was buried next to it. She pointed. "Step here." He carefully moved his foot to the spot. Nothing happened. The trap was avoided. Riven let out a breath. "You're amazing." Lyra smiled for the first time, just a little. At last, they reached a wall covered in moss and old energy wiring. It looked like a bunker hidden and silent. Lyra stepped forward. She touched the wall. Then, she called out, "Mama." Silence. Riven stepped closer. "Mama, it's me," Lyra cried again. Then, movement, a sound from behind the vines. A soft groan and a weak, shaking voice. "Lyra." The vines parted. A woman, pale blue skin, long white hair, wrapped in a damaged cloak, stepped out. Her leg was hurt, her eyes tired, but when she saw her daughter, she dropped to her knees and wept. Lyra ran into her arms. "Mama." They held each other tightly, crying, shaking, breathing together. Riven stood quietly, letting them have the moment. Then the woman looked at him. "You," she whispered. He nodded. "Your daughter's safe." Tears rolled down her face. "No one else came," she said. "Only a human." And from behind her back, she pulled out a small broken pendant. She gave it to Riven. "For you," she said, softly. "So our people never forget." The reunion had been short. Too short. Lyra's mother, Zariah, was weak. Her leg was badly wounded, wrapped in pieces of torn cloth. Her voice trembled with every word. Still, she had survived, but now they had to move. The jungle wasn't safe, and something was following them. Zariah pointed toward the fallen ruins behind the hill. "There's a tunnel system. We used it to hide before the colony fell." Riven looked at the half-buried entrance. Dark, twisting, endless, but safer than the open jungle. For now. He nodded. "Let's go." Riven carried Zariah on his back. Lyra walked close beside them, holding a glow stick in her small hand. The tunnel was cold and damp, cracked stone, rusted lights, long shadows, water dripped from the ceiling. Their footsteps echoed with every step. Suddenly a whisper, not words, not a voice, just breath, like someone exhaling behind them. Riven turned fast. A flicker of movement disappeared into the dark, raised his glow stick, nothing. But Lyra felt it too. She whispered, "It's here." They moved deeper into the ruins. At every corner, Riven marked the wall with a small scratch, so they wouldn't get lost. Zariah coughed weakly. "This place wasn't meant to be used again. We locked it long ago, but something opened it." "What kind of something?" Riven asked. She didn't answer, just shivered. As they passed a broken archway, Lyra suddenly stopped. "There," she said, pointing. A pile of stone, broken cables, scattered tools. She dropped to her knees and began digging, with her hands. "What is it?" Riven asked. "A memory," she whispered. She uncovered a small round object, a metal orb with a cracked center. It lit up as she touched it. A hologram appeared, flickering. It showed a group of children. One of them was Lyra, laughing. Her mother stood behind her in the image. The memory vanished after a few seconds. Zariah placed her hand over Lyra's. Tears filled her eyes. "I thought I lost you forever." "You didn't," Lyra said softly. "A human found me." Suddenly, a sound, a soft clicking, claws, coming from the tunnel behind them. Riven stood up fast, holding his sharp branch like a weapon. A shadow moved between the ruins, then a low growl. Out. Of the darkness crawled a creature, not the beast from before. This was smaller but faster. Its body was made of bones and wires, glowing red eyes, rusted metal fused into flesh. It looked unnatural, like it had been built from pieces of dead things. Zariah gasped. "A scavenger beast." Riven pulled Lyra behind him. The creature charged. Riven swung his stick, hit it in the face. It screeched, but it didn't stop. It slashed at him, cutting across his arm. He fell backward. The creature leapt. Lyra screamed. Suddenly, Zariah raised her hand and whispered a word in her language. Sharp blue pulse burst from her palm. The creature froze, crackled, then exploded into dust and ash. Silence. Only heavy breathing. Riven stared. "What was that?" Zariah lowered her arm. "Old blood magic. Forbidden now, but I had to protect you both." She fell to her knees, weak again. Lyra rushed to her side. Riven helped them both sit against the wall. He ripped a piece of his shirt to bandage his arm. Then he said, "This place isn't just ruins. It's a graveyard." Zariah nodded. Many secrets were buried here, and not all of them stayed dead. Just ahead, the tunnel opened into a wide stone room, walls lined with glowing markings, symbols of Lyra's people. At the center, a lift, old, rusted, but still working. Zariah pointed. "That's our way out." Riven nodded. "Then we take it." He helped them onto the lift and pressed the button. With a low rumble, the platform began to rise. As it climbed, Lyra looked up at him. "You stayed," she whispered, "even when the monster came, even when the traps tried to kill us." "I made a promise," he said. Her eyes were filled with tears. "Then I'll never leave you." The lift stopped, above them. Sunlight, the jungle, open skies. They had made it out of the maze, but Riven knew it wasn't over yet. Not until Lyra and her mother were safe. Not until whoever wanted her gone was stopped. The lift opened with a loud hiss. Sunlight poured in, warm and golden, but Riven didn't feel relief. He felt watched. Zariah, still weak, leaned against his shoulder. Lyra walked in front now, her small hand wrapped around Riven's fingers. They stepped out onto the edge of a wide ridge. The jungle below looked peaceful, but Riven knew better. The danger wasn't gone. It had just been waiting. Lyra gasped and pointed to a high ledge nearby. There, a ship, old, damaged, but hers. Zariah whispered, "It's my escape vessel. I hid it." The night the colony burned, they hurried forward. Riven helped Zariah climb the slope while Lyra ran ahead. She stopped halfway. Frozen, because someone else was standing by the ship. A tall alien man dressed in black armor with gold eyes and a twisted scar across his face. "Lyra," he said coldly, "you were supposed to stay lost." Riven stepped between them, protecting both mother and child. "Who are you?" he asked. The man smiled, cruel. "The one who tried to fix the future. Her mother defied the council. She kept the child." Zariah's voice was trembling. "She's just a girl. She's a threat," the man snapped. "Born with forbidden traits, too human, too different." He stepped forward. "Give her to me. Walk away alive." Riven didn't move. "No," the man narrowed his eyes. "You're human, you should understand. The galaxy fears your kind for a reason." Riven's jaw tightened. "Then maybe it's time the galaxy learns why." The armored alien raised his weapon, but Riven was faster. He threw a stone, striking the alien's face, and charged forward. They clashed hard, fists and elbows flying. The alien was strong, but Riven fought like someone with nothing to lose. He took hits, but he didn't fall. Behind him, Lyra shouted. Zariah raised her hand, summoning her last spark of energy, and cast a blue shield around her daughter. The alien struck Riven hard, knocking him down. Then he raised his weapon toward Lyra. Only to stop because Lyra stood tall, unafraid. I am not a mistake, she said softly. I am my mother's hope. And his friend. She raised her hand, and the pendant her mother had given Riven began to glow. Blue light shot out. The alien screamed, blinded, and fell back. Zariah whispered. It recognized her blood. The old code. Riven stood again, limping toward Lyra. He looked down at her. You okay? She nodded, then looked up at the sky. Let's go home. Zariah, with help, boarded the ship. Riven lifted Lyra into his arms and carried her aboard. The engines coughed, roared, and lifted. As the ship rose into the sky, they left behind the broken colony, the ruins, the pain, but not the memories. Inside the ship, Lyra curled up beside Riven. You didn't let go, she whispered. Never will, he said. She smiled. You shared your food. You fought monsters. You brought me to my mother. She looked up, eyes shining. So now, I'll protect you too. Zariah approached, slow but steady now. She sat beside them and placed her hand over Riven's. In our stories, there were creatures called guardians, rare, brave, selfless. She smiled. Today, I met one, and as the stars opened before them, a human boy and an alien child watched the galaxy together, one saved the other. And now, neither would ever be alone. Again,